Good morning. My name is Akeem, and welcome to Lost Movie Madness. I'm trying something new today. I'm uploading this to YouTube, and today I'm going to talk about the movie Over the Top. This is a movie that came out in 1987, starring Sly Stallone, and it is one of the best things I've seen in a long time. As you see there, Sly is super buff. Look at him in a tank top. He's all oiled up, and a guy is drinking oil out of a can. That is as America as you can get. Now, Over the Top is a movie about arm wrestling, but it's about so much more. It's about America in the 80s. It's about a father and a son trying to reconnect. It's about all sorts of good stuff. But before we get started, if you like what I do, please like, share, and subscribe to Lost Movie Madness on YouTube. It's also a podcast, and you're able to subscribe to that on any of the podcasters that you do. Google Podcast, Stitcher. What is the other one? Anchor, Spotify. I'm on all of those podcaster catchers, but I also have this new YouTube channel. So for those who are listening to my podcatcher, this is on YouTube as well. So you can see me in the Recovery House Studios. And this is brought to you, of course, by Cracked Tooth Productions, because I have a cracked front tooth. But I sat here this morning, it's a Sunday, and I watched Over the Top. And I was like, okay, well, it's WrestleMania weekend. I don't want to watch any wrestling, but I'll watch a movie about arm wrestling. Now, I talk about many things, and I'm not an expert. I'm not a movie studio guy, or we're not going to do any sort of, oh, well, this is the artistic direction. But we will discuss several points, and I'll go over those things as we go along. But before we get started, this movie begins. Sly Stallone is driving along, and he's a truck driver with an old beat up truck. And it starts with his son. His son is in military school. So he pulls up to the gate of this big plaza, and they're like, please go to the back, because that's where deliveries go. And he's like, no, I'm here to pick up my son. So he drives in this truck, and he's wearing suspenders and a pair of pants. Now, I'd like to say one thing. Sly Stallone, I work with a guy who wears suspenders all the time. But Sly Stallone in this movie doesn't wear suspenders all the time. But suspenders are a lifestyle choice. When you decide that you're going to wear suspenders, you have to ditch the idea of wearing a belt. You're like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my pants baggy enough so they can be held up by straps on my shoulders. And that's a look that you've decided that you want to go with, a look that feels like, oh, this is exactly how my life's going to go. And people will address you in that way. When people look at you, and it's not so important what people think when they look at you, but when people look at you, they will have a certain idea of who you are from the fact that you've chosen to wear suspenders. And in this movie, Sly Stallone is wearing suspenders. And one of the first things that you get from Sly Stallone and the people is he's walking into a building, and everybody starts turning like, who is that? Why is he here? Why is that guy walking into the building? And you would think that in the 1980s that nobody had seen a guy drive a truck before. And these people were so separated from the rest of us that they can't fathom why this guy would even be there, which is just amazing. It is an amazing thing to think that that was a thing in the mid 80s. And it wasn't. I mean, this is 1987 when this movie comes out. So it really wasn't. So, oh my God, I can't believe that person is socializing with us and within the same area as we are. So the movie starts out there. So he's a blue collar guy. He's driving a truck. We're going to pretend like it's not Sly Stallone and everybody doesn't know him and nobody's seen Rocky. and that the reaction of everybody in, this rich, what is it, a military school, um, is confused. So his son Michael is all set to go in a limousine that his grandfather has sent for him, and Sly Stallone shows up, and he's like, "I'm here to pick up my son." And the guy who runs the military academy, which I believe is a colonel, the colonel goes, "All right, well, you're gonna go with your dad." And he's like, my dad left me. Can I get some ID on this guy? Like he's there to kidnap him. Oh, it's good stuff. Like he's like some guy just showed up at the military school. It was like, I want to pick up my son. And Sly goes, "Oh, I'm prepared for this." And he shows a picture of him and his mom at their wedding day. And the kid has got some questions, which, safe to say, I think the kid should have some questions. And he goes, and so the colonel, and this is one of the things that tells you about what the 80s is like. The kid goes, "I need some ID." And the colonel's like, "That's not necessary. Just go with your dad. You ain't seen him in 10 years, but just go with him. We don't really care about your safety or whether or not this person, even if he is your father, whether or not this person is qualified to take care of a child. We just think, hey, that's your dad." And that's one of the tropes in this film, and one of the tropes of movies in the 80s a lot. Is just masculinity is good enough. And I love that guy's face. That guy's face is great. The hair is great. The face is great. And throughout this movie, if you do watch this movie, America in the 80s with the hair and the music and all those things is in full effect. And as Charlie Day would say, when they made this movie, they decided to go all America over our asses. And that is what they have done. So I'm watching this thing and I'm sitting through it and I'm just like, okay, well, it's hitting the beats. But early on, Michael goes, "Why did you leave?" He's like, "I had reasons." And I'm like, "Really? Is that the answer?" "I had reasons. And I'm never going to do it again." Now, my dad left me for 10 years. And I have those level of abandonment issues. I don't think I'm going to believe I had reasons. It's enough for me to be like, okay, well, let's go on this trip. And it isn't. And I will say this for Michael. Michael does have some agency, unlike his mother in this movie. He does have some agency, and Michael's like, I'm out. So he tells his dad to pull over, and there's a fence, a random fence beside the the freeway. So since he can't go into the sideline, he decides that he's going to run off into traffic, and he starts running into traffic. It's amazing. It's like an 8-lane highway, and the kid is running across, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Which they should be. And truthfully, Michael probably should have died when he crossed that street, but that makes a very short movie. So they get in the truck, and Michael's like, "All right, well, I guess I'm being hijacked to go see my mom." By the way, the mom has a heart problem. It's not really explained until we meet the mom. The mom has a heart problem. She's going for surgery. So the dad is taking him there on the dad's way to go arm wrestle, because he's got an old truck and he wants the new truck and the $100,000 that comes with the truck for winning an arm wrestle competition. And if you're watching this, that's the visual. This is the arm wrestling competition that you're watching in Vegas at the Hilton. Now, so they call the mom and they talk to her, and on their way they stop at this Greasy Spoon, and it's full of just Americana from the 80s. Just big hair, the music. "Hey kid, what do you want?" And he's like, "I want, dad wants steak." And he's like, "No, I want tuna on toast with a salad or some sort of garbage. Because cholesterol will kill you and it'll make you die." So Sly orders tuna. So they have their lunch, and the antagonist on the wrestling side, this guy in the yellow, Big Bull, challenges him to a wrestling match, and he's like, "No, I'm not going to arm wrestle you. We'll save it till Vegas." But Sly convinces his son to get an arm wrestling match with. No, that's the second day, but with these kids, and the kid's like, "If I can't beat you, I might as well kill myself," which is a rough thing to say. It sets you up for failure too. So, kids out there, if somebody challenges you to something, if you set your expectations too high, you can end up losing and then feeling really bad about yourself, which is not where we want to be. Mental health is important. Also, you should never say you should kill yourself, because that's just awful. And what you speak out loud, you do hear it as well. So you shouldn't place your faith or your personal wealth into physical strength, feats of strength, because there's usually always a bigger person to meet you, as Bull finds out at the end of this film. So, over the top. And this movie is really over the top. So what happens is they're driving along, and Robert Loggia, which, by the way, Robert Loggia is great in anything. If you ever get a chance to watch a Robert Loggia film, oh my God, he brings passion. He makes it real. There's no question that Robert Loggia was a great actor. God rest his soul. So Robert Loggia's in this, and they catch up with them, and they go to the hospital, and Michael's mom, who had heart surgery, died on the table. And we find this out because, as I said, they had talked to her twice, but she has no agency. She's just a MacGuffin. She's a means to an end. She's a person. She's sick. She wants her son to get back in contact with her dad, much like boys in the Hood, excuse me, not Boys to Men. I couldn't help but think about Motown Philly, but Boys in the Hood. Mom's there for a second. She's like, "Oh, get back in touch with your father," and the mom disappears. And that's really what happens in this film. She has no agency. None of the women are important. There are a couple women arm wrestling. You see a couple of their matches, but that's about it. For women, they have no sort of character or agency. They are a means to an end. So she dies, and the kid goes back with his father. Michael goes back with his grandfather. And when he does that, Sly Stallone tries to get to the house. They won't let him in, this big gated house. So he decides he's going to drive his truck through the front of this mansion. This mansion, by the way, looks like the mansion from Scarface, for anybody who's seen Scarface, that he gets shot up in. So he drives to the courtyard. First of all, that truck that old ain't driving through that courtyard and knocking over statues. The thing is breaking down as it hits the gate. But he gets there and he gets arrested. And Michael tells him that he wants to stay with his grandfather. And he says, okay. So he signs the boy over, and they drop the charges. Because, by the way, not only the property destruction, he almost runs over two guys. That's at least attempted murder twice. But they dropped the charges, which I'm not sure the state would agree to. And he drives off to Vegas because his aim is to win the arm wrestling championship. And the only way for him to do that is to drive to Vegas. Now, if anybody's been to Vegas recently, this is not that Vegas. This is old Vegas. This is sort of cheap and trashy and rundown Vegas. Having been there quite a few times in my life, whenever I go to old Vegas and I see the Sands or whatever is still there, the Gold Rush or the Gold Nugget, I'm not sure which one. I always think, wow, this is interesting. This is what they talked about with Sammy and Dino and Frankie and Peter Lawford back in the 60s. And it is not what I would call high class. But that's the Vegas that they go to. Before they turned it down, before the Wynn became a thing, and before the mega structures that we see in Vegas now, we're in old Vegas, and we're at the Hilton. And they have an arm wrestling competition. And he sells his truck. Sly Stallone sells his truck for $7,000. And he's like, okay, well, this is it. This is like in ancient times, if you were in a battle, You knew your commander was serious if you had crossed the river and you burned your boats, because there's no way back. That's it. This is what we're staking our lives on. So if I burn the boats, that means you either fight or you die. There ain't no way getting back across the river, no way getting back home. So we either win or we die. So that's pretty much what he does. He burns his ships, he sells his truck, and he bets $7,000 on himself. And he goes, what are the odds? And the guy goes, 20-1 on Lincoln Hawks. He's like, okay, give me the 7,000. And the guy has one of the best lines in the movie. He's like, well, that's what I call gambling. Which is a great line. It's a one-liner, and it's terrible, but it's a great line, because he's like, you are not. Whoever Lincoln Hawks is, I'm not sure the guy knows. Whoever Lincoln Hawks is, that guy is not going to win this competition, which is a bit of an ego blow. So anyway, the guys that you see on screen, Lincoln Hawks, they all get to the semifinals. And at the semifinals, he's hurt his arm or something, and he loses the first round to this guy with the big, hairy, bushy beard who drinks the Valvoline right in front of him. And he loses, and he just is a failure, and everything's going to continue to go the same way that it's always going for him in his life. And I look, and Sly Stallone, for all the people who say he can't act, Sly Stallone is bringing something to this role. Not much, but he's bringing something. He's got the depth of emotion in the face. He's not stone-faced like Keanu does. He really is bringing something, and you can tell that he's hurting inside. He's lost his son. And, I forgot the best part. He teaches his son how to drive a big 18-wheeler on the roads, which even in the 80s, you were getting pulled over. But he teaches his son how to drive, and that comes into play now because the son finds the letters that his mom never showed him. And I'm sorry, I have allergies, so I'm a little stuffy right now. And he decides that he's going to go to Vegas and find his father at this competition. So he steals one of the trucks out of the garage of his grandfather. And by the way, his grandfather's a multimillionaire. I should have said that to begin with. Robert Loggia has a lot of money, and he believes that Lincoln Hawks has been used his daughter for money and is just looking for a meal ticket, which he might have been. That's not really described. And when he finds the letters, he jumps in a car in white jeans, and he drives off to the airport, and he has a little misadventure as the father is losing. He's winning those matches and gets to the semifinal. He gets to the airport, and this tells you the difference between airports back from now till then, is that he gets into the airport, he has no ticket, he got no ID, but he gets on a plane, and the grandfather follows him in his plane, his private plane. And they're in California, so the flight to Vegas is about an hour. And they get there, and he's trying to find his father. And the grandfather comes and finds Lincoln Hawks and is like, come here. I give you $500,000, and I give you that brand new truck if you just leave your grandson alone, which is a weird thing to say because Lincoln did sign over custody. So he has no legal rights at that point. As a father, legal rights to your children is a thing. So he has no legal rights to the child any longer. He signed it over. So I'm not really sure why the grandfather feels like he needs to do any of that, because legally he can't take the child. And if he does take the child, that's a kidnapping charge, which I believe is about 10 years federally. So that's the thing. It's a weird thing for him to offer $500,000 and a new truck. So anyway, he turns it down, and Terry Funk, shout out to wrestlers and wrestling fans out there. Terry Funk's in this thing. He really has nothing to do. He's in a couple scenes, and at the end, as Sly is trying to leave, they're on the balcony, and he stops and he says, Mr. Cutler isn't done with you. And Sly Stallone says, well, I'm done with this. And he punches him in the stomach and throws him through the glass doors. Which, again, there's a lot of property destruction that Sly Stallone does in this movie. And the Hilton is going to charge you a lot of money. Now, speaking of the Hilton, before I get to the denouement, before I get to the finish, there's a lot of product placement. And one of the things I want to do on these is talk about product placement. On the side of a truck, there's a Brute sign. And for those who don't know what Brute is, Brute was omnipresent in the mid-'80s. It was an aftershave that stung when you put it on. And it smelled really strong. It wasn't that great a smell, but a lot of dudes wore it. It's like Axe, but it can't. And you can still buy it. It comes in a green bottle, and it says Brute on it, and it's really not a great smell. But, you know, for young guys, a lot of kids, you know, people who wear Axe rather than actual cologne, it was that sort of thing. And next thing is a lot of Gold's Gym T-shirts. Gold's Gym was like the only national gym at the time. So Gold's Gym, that's it. That was a thing. There's a Solo Flex t-shirt, which I didn't even know Solo Flex was a thing. But Solo Flex has been around 40 years. That's amazing. There's an Alka-Seltzer, just guys taking Alka-Seltzer because apparently the world of competitive arm wrestling can give you an ulcer. It's a rough world. And there's a Fujinaki sign, and there's also a Pepsi sign. Those are the ones I saw. And if you saw any, please mention them in the comments. If you watch this film, hopefully I get a few viewers. And so we get to the finals, and he's lost the one. He loses the one to the hairy guy, and Michael comes and peps him up, and he sees him. He's like, oh, this is awesome. So he gets to the semifinals, and he goes to everybody. The guy who beat him Now, over the top is, you know, what they call the arm wrestling, but Sly Stallone does this thing where he grabs the hand and then he changes the grip, and that gives him the extra strength to go over the top. So he gets to the semifinals. He beats the guy who beat him, and then he beats this black guy real fast. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but he beats him. That's it. It's over. And then you get to the final match, and Bull, the big, beefy guy, he's psyched everybody up. He hasn't lost in 5 years. He gets to him, and here we go. Now, this ain't going to be a quick match because that's not how movies work. It isn't it. So they get to pull in, and Michael's giving him a pep talk before, and he's like, Michael, I don't know if I'm going to win. He's like, what did you tell me that you're going to, you know, if you feel like you're going to win, you can win it, and it's strong, and, you know, no matter what the odds are, you can win, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, Michael, let's try. So he comes back, he's got a New York t-shirt, represent New York, always, and he's got suspenders on, again, a lifestyle choice. I have no opinion about it, but it's a lifestyle choice. And he gets up there, and they go about their business. And they get on the first go round, the hand slip. All right, so what are we going to do? We can't have the hand slips. We got to have a winner in this thing. So they put on the strap. Let's get the strap. Oh, I should mention, before anything, as they're setting up the match and they're coming up to the front, they're like, here are the referees. And they bring about 15 referees out this thing, which is strange to me because it's an arm wrestling match. How many referees do you want? 2, maybe? 3? The rest are just standing around milling about, but it brings a sense of occasion to this thing. And people are taking pictures, as you can see, and they get there and they put the strap on him. And Sly Stallone just push and pull. And as they put the strap on him, Bull punches him in his face so his nose is bleeding. So in the final, you get the great visual of the Sly Stallone bleeding out his nose, trying to go over the top, and it's back and forth, and then he changes the grip. And he changes the grip, he pulls it back, and he wins it. Done. He's got $140,000 from his bet. He's got the $100,000 that he won. He's got the brand new truck so he can start a business and start a life with Michael. And Robert Loggia, as he watches it, Like everything is understood by you winning a wrestling match. And that's the end of the movie. Him and Michael walk off into the sunset. Michael says we should call it Sun and Hawks. Trucking companies are how about Hawks and Sun? They get in the truck and they drive off into the ether. And that's it. That's the end. That's the end of the movie. And they drive off with the Great Americana soundtrack going on, some Kenny Loggins, which is good stuff. And that's it. The movie's over. Now I'll talk about a few things. One, the story. The story is just paid by numbers. You could put it wherever. It's fine. The acting. The acting's pretty good. It's spotty. It's a cheesy 80s flick. There's nothing out of this world. It ain't going to win an Academy Award. But that is what it is. Now, the cinematography, it's got some beautiful shot. It's shot well. The visuals, whoever knows director of photography knew what they were doing. And they made sure that everybody was able to do whatever they needed to do in order to get where they were going. So, cinematography, good. And they made sure that the visuals were right. Like you can see Sly's face. You can see the beads of sweat. You can see everything that they want you to see in the vistas of where they're driving. And whoever would direct photography really knew what they were doing, what shots that they wanted, and how they wanted to come off visually. The acting was great. The story was great. The pacing of the film, it goes along. It clips along. It doesn't keep you stay with it, and you're not bored, and everything was fine there. The entertainment value, it's pretty entertaining. I mean, it's about arm wrestling, so depends on how you feel about arm wrestling. Really, that's about it. And the last part is, would I watch it? Would I recommend it? And if you're into cheesy 80s films and you think you wanna watch it, then yeah, I'd watch it. Although I will say, watch at your own hazard. Watch if you want. Don't blame me if you do. It's a movie about arm wrestling, and it's a Sly Stallone movie from the mid '80s. So that's it. It's a easy hour and a half watch. If you want to feel good about America and where we've been and where we're going, then yeah, I'd recommend it. And that's about it. So at the end of my podcast, at the end of my videos, I talk about some things that I am watching. So right now I'm watching a show called Bridget and Eamon. Bridget and Eamon is amazing. It is a fun ride in 1980s Ireland with two people who hate each other. You can find it on Prime. And it's just a great film. I mean, a great TV show, I should say. It's easy to watch. Half hour, bing, bang, boom. You ain't got to get dragged down in it. You don't have to sit and binge all of it. But I did. I thought it was great. And it's only like 24 episodes. But it's really good. So that's it today for Lost Movie Madness. If you liked what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe on any podcatchers that you're listening to this on. Please give me a review and comment. And if there are any movies you'd like me to watch, or if you'd like to talk to me about a movie, please leave a message to me in the comments or send me an email at lostmoviemadness@gmail.com. Again, that's lostmoviemadness@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and you have a great day.